Today's lesson is adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. So this is review from previous courses that you might have taken, but this can be a very tough topic. I still have times where I need to stop and think, what am I actually doing? Moving left on the number line, moving right on the number line. So to help along with that, I have kind of created a little cheat sheet. One thing you should always do is change subtraction to the opposite. And I don't say negative because when you have subtraction, it doesn't mean that it's always negative. It can just be the opposite. And I'll give you two examples. I could have 5 minus 2. I could also have 7 minus a negative 8. So when I say you want to change subtraction to the opposite, for my first problem, I would change subtraction so it says plus, but then you always have to change it to the opposite that's shown. So the opposite of a positive 2 would be a negative 2. In my second example, I'm going to change my subtraction to a plus, but this is a negative 8, so the opposite of a negative 8 would be a positive 8. So that's why when you have subtraction, it's like the opposite. And you'll hear me say opposite a lot in class. And then we have two different steps. If both numbers have the same sign, either both positive, both negative, you add the numbers and keep the sign. So an example of that would be if I had 9 plus 7, or if I had negative 10 plus a negative 8. When I'm looking here after once, I change subtraction to opposite. 9 and 7 are both positive numbers. There's no negative number there, so I add those together, and 9 plus 7 would give me 16. And since they both were positive to begin with, they're both positive, or my answer would be positive. And if I look at my second example, here I have a negative 10 and a negative 8. So since they're both the same sign, both negative, I add those together, and I get 18. And since they started out being negative, my answer will be negative. Now, if I have an opposite sign, one positive, one negative, you have to subtract the numbers and keep the larger numbers sign. So two examples of that could be, let's have 15 plus a negative 30. I could have also had negative 12 plus 20. So again, here opposite sides. Here 15 is positive and 30 is negative. So no matter what, I'm going to subtract the two numbers. 30 minus 15 is going to give me 15. But now, how do you know what sign to keep with? Well, since my 30 was a bigger number, then I'm going to keep negative as my sign. So my answer will be a negative 15. Again, opposite signs, you keep the larger numbers sign. So if I look at this problem, just by looking, I know that 20 is the larger of the two numbers, so my answer should be positive. So since they have opposite signs, one being negative, one positive, I subtract the two and I get 8. And since 20 is the larger of the two numbers, then it's going to say as a positive 8. So as you're working through problems like this, this is what you should be thinking in your head. Do they have the same sign? If they do, then I add the numbers and keep the sign. If they have opposite signs, I look for which number is larger, subtract, and keep the larger number sign. So right now, I want you to test it out. I want you to try and solve these 10 problems on your own. So I want you to push pause and solve these. Make sure do not use your calculator when doing this. I will have quizzes or tests or both where you do not get to use a calculator and you have to solve this using your brain. So again, push pause and I want you to attempt to solve these 10 problems. So now that I solved the problems, I'm going to be going through them kind of quickly. So the first one, I'm going to go down the first column and then the second column. The first one, they're opposite signs, so I subtract them, and I see that 22 is larger, so then this should have a negative 9 with it. The second one, first I changed my subtraction to opposite. Once I did, I saw they're opposite signs, so I subtracted two numbers and I got 64. And since 96 was larger, I kept a negative sign with it. For the third one, they're opposite signs again, and I see that 15 is larger, so my answer would be a -3 once I subtract. The next one, I changed my subtraction to opposite, and I see that 45 is larger, so once I subtract them, I keep it as a positive number. And the last one on my first column, I changed my subtraction to my opposite, and now I see that they're the same signs, both have negative numbers, so my answer is negative, and I add them together since they're both negative. The second column, first one I changed my subtraction to negative, and then I saw that my 10 is larger, so then my answer should be negative. Next one, again, opposite signs. 17 is larger, so my answer is negative once I subtract the numbers. Third one, they're opposite signs, so I subtract them, and my 30 is larger, so my answer is negative. My fourth one, I changed subtraction to opposite, and then I saw that they both have negative numbers, so then I add the two together, and they keep their negative sign. And the very last one, I changed my subtraction to opposite, and I saw that now they're both positive numbers, so I add them together to get 114. Now we have a little word problem. So as I'm going to be reading through this word problem, I'm probably going to be writing down some numbers or lines. So a reef explorer dives 25 feet to photograph brain coral. So I'm going to draw a picture. So let's say here's my water, and I knew that they dive 25 feet down. Oops, that's an F. And then rises 16 feet to travel over a ridge. So then they went 16 feet up before diving 47 feet from there to survey the base of the reef. Then the diver rises 29 feet to see an underwater cavern. What is the location of the cavern in relation to the sea level? So again, we're not really sure where the person's at. Now if I look at this, wherever I moved up towards the water, that would be like a positive number. And when I moved down, that would be like a negative number. So I'm going to rewrite this so it looks mathematical. So my 25, I went down, so that would be a -25. And then I went up 16, I went down 47, and then I went up 29. And when I'm solving this, I want to use PEMDAS. But first what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my subtraction to negative. Well, since at the very beginning of my problem, there's something in front, I'm just going to leave that negative sign as is. But I'm going to change this subtract 47 to plus a -47. So now I'm going to move left to right. So first I'm going to look at these two numbers. And I see that the 25 is larger, and that's negative. So my answer here is going to be negative. So 25 minus 16 would give me 9. So this would be a -9. And then I'm going to write out the rest of my numbers. And now I'm going to look at the next two numbers in front, which would be -9 and -47. Since they're both negative, I'm going to add those two numbers together. And I would get -56 plus 29. So now I finish, since these are opposite of each other, one's negative and one is positive, then I subtract the two numbers, and I see that my 56 is larger, so my answer should be negative. So 56 minus 29 would be 27. So it says, what is the location? My actual question is, what is the location of the cavern in relation to the sea level? Well, I would say it's 27 feet below sea level because it was a negative number. So make sure to fill out the Google form and submit. Have a wonderful day.